For Stevie Wonder,
What the f...
the Monkees, the Jackson 5, the Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, or One Direction, there was Frankie Lymon and the Teenagers. Frankie and the Teenagers were the prototype for today's boy bands. Frankie, the star, was snatched from the slums of Harlem at the age 13 and catapulted into national prominence. And it's safe to say that Frankie Lymon was one of the most influential and talented figures early in the music industry. Unfortunately, he met the fate of most other child stars, a treacherous adulthood filled with addiction and eventually an overdose at 25. Nevertheless, Frankie had a once-in-a-lifetime career, and since his death has been dubbed a classic case of a child star unable to cope with fame. But his story is often confused, and as a person, he was misunderstood. This is the tragic tale of Frankie Lymon, America's first teenage rock star. Early life: September 30th, 1942, Washington Heights, New York. A maid and a truck driver would have their first child, Frankie Joseph Lymon. Frankie would grow up in Harlem and had 3 brothers. Their family was musical, with his parents being part of a gospel group called the Harmonies, and Frankie's brothers would take out.
They were both a part of the... That's how he was able to sing like that. Had that in his genes.
After him singing as well. As a neighborhood, Harlem has a history of economic deprivation, and that environment made Frankie tough and hustler from a young age. In an interview, he'd say, "I was a man when I was 11 years old, doing everything most men do. In the neighborhood where I lived, there was no time to be a child. He had to help make ends meet. So at the age of 10, Frankie was already working at a neighborhood grocery store saying, while most kids my age were playing ball and marbles, I was working the grocery store helping pay rent." On top of that, at a young age, Frankie was already engaging in activities even most adults wouldn't dare do. As a kid, he was hustling prostitutes, saying, "I remember when I was 10, I made a good living hustling prostitutes for white men that would come up to Harlem looking for black girls. I'd get a commission for every customer I brought them," and said, "Sometimes they'd pay me off with something extra." Frankie wasn't just using his grocery store money to help his family out either. Pot was a commonplace for kids where he grew up, even among young teenagers. And Frankie started in
Little bro had a business going.
grade school. Journey in music. When Frankie was young, he joined a church group, learned to sing, and was even playing the drums. One day in school, he saw a group called the Coup de Ville at a talent show. The Coup de Ville were a local doo-wop group of black and Puerto Rican kids. Frankie begged them for months to join their group, and a month before his 13th birthday, they obliged. As a group, they changed their name multiple times, from the Premiers to the Harmonies, and finally, the Teenagers. Frankie wasn't even the lead singer at first. He was a backup in the quartet, and this time, Lymon was in 8th grade and the Teenagers were sophomores. They grew up in New York in the early 50s. Those days, singing on street corners was the thing to do, and it was how people got noticed. Doo-wop was to kids back then what rap is today. The Teenagers would sing at the grocery store.
I was about to say, I ain't know what no doo-wop. I was just gonna let it rock. I ain't know what doo-wop was. What did you say?
Doo-wop was to kids back.
You think it just came back in 2024? It'd be fire. You think people would like doo-wop in 2024? Like if like a group of like 5 dudes just like brought it back.
Back then, what rap is today. The Teenagers would sing at the grocery store
throw it all the way back
every day, harmonizing on the street corners till the neighbors called the cops on them.
I think so. I think at first people would probably think like, oh, it's weird, or like, oh, you guys are like old school or whatever. But then like, you know, once people really start fucking with it, then like everybody's gonna get on board. I think it'd be kind of fun, especially seeing that live, bro. Seeing that live in like at a concert or something would be so fire, bro. It'd be a breath of fresh air for sure, bro.
Frankie's mother used to come and holler, "Frankie, it's 9 time to come home." One day, a well-known singer, Richard Barnett of the Valentines, moved to their area. They took advantage of the opportunity and sang for him. He was shook by the vocals and agreed to let them audition for G Records. When he originally took them down to the record company, they did.
Oh, you literally meant G. Bro, I'm over
to
here.
Let them audition for G Records.
Over here trying to like see like, okay, I see the G, but I don't know what these other letters are. But then I realized it was actually just a G. And I'm like, Oh.
When he originally took them down to the record company, they didn't want to record them because they were kids and were worried about issues with the school board. However, Lymon's voice shocked the owner, George Goldner, who said as long as they put Frankie at the lead, they would have themselves a deal. They were just kids though, so their parents would sign the deal with 3 lawyers, which gave the kids an allowance and sent the rest of the money to a trust for when they were 21. Their group dynamic between Frankie and the quartet later served as the model for Motown's early groups, as well as Michael Jackson's Jackson 5 from when he was a kid. Their first release, Why Do Fools Fall in Love, was originally titled Why Do the Birds Sing So Gay? But they were told to change
Why did the birds sing so gay?
The name. So Frankie and Herman Santiago worked on some of the lyrics and the song was renamed Why Do Fools Fall in Love? This detail is important for later on for why the rest of the teenagers never got paid. The teenagers used to sing in the hallways, and one day a man came out of his apartment and paid. The teenagers used to sing in the hallways, and one day a man came out of his apartment and said, I'm tired of you guys constantly singing the same song in front of my door. So he gave him a poem called Why Do Birds Sing So Gay? They changed some of the song and they had a new song, Why Do Fools Fall in Love? They wrote it as schoolboys during lunch. The
sing so gay and lovers await the break of day. Why do they fall in love? How does the rain fall from up above? Fall in love. Why do they fall in love?
The song went number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart and went number 1 in the UK.
Like 6'6"?
They were
Were they taller? Were people taller back in the day? Or are we taller nowadays?
wildly popular.
Like average height. Average height in like the 60s, bro. Average height in the US. 5'9", okay. I'm 5'10 3/4, above average. Average height, US 1960. Oh, okay, so it's about the same. Interesting.
A parade of girls would come past the block and try to see Frankie and one of the teenagers. Pretty soon, they were appearing in all
overseas though. Them boys built different out there. I ain't even gonna lie. Seen the thickest. Wait, what?
48 states, some of the biggest theaters, TV. They were the first real crossover group. They appealed to everyone. Black, white, Hispanics. Boris Levy, the other owner of G Records, began managing the group as well, and would eventually be responsible for separating the group. In 1956, Frankie and the Teenagers released 9 singles and performed at the biggest rock and roll show. There, Frankie became close with Zola Taylor, a member of another famous group, the Platters, and they had intercourse on tour while they had a 5-year The Platters.
What did you just say?
Frankie became close with Zola Taylor, a member of another famous group, the Platters, and they had intercourse on tour while they had a 5-year age gap. Frankie would later go on to regularly have intercourse with girls twice his age, from the age 14. It was his type. In an interview he said, I didn't like the screaming teenage types, saying they didn't know anything about life.
Nah, little bro devious. He said they ain't know nothing about life, bruh. I'm trying to, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to talk to somebody who really knows something about life. You know what I mean?
I went for women of 25 or over. They were less trouble and more rewarding.
Hey, I ain't gonna lie, Frankie. Hey, do your thing, little bro. I feel that, bruh.
He used to pass his sweethearts off as his mother's or older sister to avoid a scandal.
Yeah, how about you learn how to actually spell ground, alright, buddy? Get your ass on the grown now? Yeah. Stay in school.
Because his managers and advisors wanted.
Maybe instead of joining the Air Force, you need to join somebody's college. Go to community college, get on a university. Nah, it's too late now. It don't even hit the same no more.
Him to keep the wholesome image. His first big show business romance was with a nightclub dancer.
You have to try again.
Who later accompanied him on tours, posing as his mother. Frankie explained how they met. I first met her at a party.
All your insults gonna do 0 damage for the next 5 minutes.
This doll walked up, pinched my cheek, and said, "Oh, isn't he cute?" I told her her, "You're not so bad yourself, baby. You sure look good to me." I guess she was pretty shocked. She said, "You shouldn't talk to your elders like that." I asked her, "How about going to breakfast after your last show?" Later, I bought some scotch and took her to my room. In show business, gossip travels fast. Pretty soon, I had a whole stable of women, one in every city.
Little bro was moving like that? Oh, wow. Whoa, whoa. Whoa.
He even almost got exposed once, stating, when a newspaper reporter who had been introduced to one of my mothers in New York caught my act in Chicago and was introduced to another one of my mothers, I had a hard time convincing him that he had seen the same women in both cities, especially since they looked nothing alike. Frankie's management realized Frankie's marketability, and Goldner began to promote Frankie as a solo act.
Now that is kind of crazy though, like having like a child star be so like grown for his age. Like he didn't really have a chance to be a kid, you know what I'm saying? He's a teenager, he hitting girls that's 25 because they don't know about life. Like, bro, you shouldn't even be knowing about life that young, you know what I'm saying? That is kind of crazy though. Like he just grew up really, really fast, you know? That's kind of unfortunate though. Whenever you like actually think about it, like, never mind, I'm bricked. Okay.
Scheduled solo gigs for Lymon, causing tensions between the group while they were on tour in Europe. Around that time, Goldner sold his end of G Records to the other owner of G Records.
Wait, was this a private jet? Like, when did people start like regularly flying planes, bro? Brushing their teeth? When did they? Oh, okay. Alright, so it ain't that crazy. Okay. Start, yeah, commercial flights. Yeah, when did that start? 1914? Really? Interesting. Oh, and it became common in the 60s and 70s. Wow, okay. Half of all Americans have flown, although passengers were still business travelers. Okay, interesting. Alright. That's cool.
Around that time, Goldner sold his end of G Records to the other owner of G Records, a man named Boris Levy, a mobster. And before he did,
you said he's a what?
Owner of G Records, a man named Boris Levy, a mobster.
Bro, it's so crazy though how like this was common back in the day though. Like somebody being a mobster was like common, bruh. He looked like he part of the mob though, I ain't gonna lie. It looked like he got a little bit of a unibrow coming together. Like his unibrow get too close, he gonna have a real bad day until he shave that little piece off, bruh. That be happening to me too though, bruh. Like it's not that bad right now, I don't think. Yeah, y'all can't really see it right now. I be making sure I shave it. It don't really come in a whole lot until like a couple months. But like, bro, when it comes in, if I wait too long to cut it, like, bro, the hairs will start touching, bro. Cause I think my dad had a unibrow, bro. I'm almost positive my dad had a unibrow. I gotta show y'all the picture one day, bro. I'm gonna show y'all the picture of my dad, bro. Cause the crazy thing, like, the internet's a crazy place. I could show the picture of my dad, and somebody's going to find him, bro. That's the crazy part. Like, someone would actually find him off of that. I gotta show y'all that picture one day, bro. Remind me, chat. Remind me. I gotta show y'all that picture one day.
And before he did, he said Santiago and Lymon had written a song. During the tour, the teenagers were ignored. Frankie was the only one interviewed or given attention.
Oh. No, you're done again.
They also dropped A Miracle in the Rain, but Frankie was singing by himself, and Goldner got another nameless group to record the background vocals.
Oh. Nah. I ain't gonna lie, I'd be upset, bro. Because these four already had their own group before Frankie even joined. So they didn't see any of these guys as real talent. They only saw Frankie. That's kind of crazy, bruh.
But when it dropped, it said Frankie Lymon and the Teenagers. Members of the group rebelled against Frankie, and the tour in Europe was nearly sabotaged by fistfights and threats of a strike by fellow singers. When they went back to America, they got into an argument, and Frankie left the group.
Not with the group in the background anymore. Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to eliminate it? Well, it's not necessary.
What happened with the group? Did they just leave on their own?
No, they wanted to go as a quartet instead of a quintet. They figured they might make it better by themselves. So.
I see.
Levy had successfully ripped them apart, as well as robbed the teenagers, and the kid who was once begging to sing was now the star. In September of 1957, Frankie left the group and his solo career started off with a decent hit, My Girl, which got him a record deal, as well as the Goody Goody, which he
My Girl is what? That was the one we just heard, right? Oh, never mind. Little bitty pretty one.
even performed on The Ed Sullivan Show, a huge late-night show back then on TV. However, Frankie was in no shape to become a solo act, and those around him weren't aware of that. Meanwhile, with Frankie gone, the teenagers dropped a new song called Flip Flop with a new lead singer. Like the name, it flopped, and they
Like the name, it flopped. Jesus.
were done. Out of the showbiz, a tale as old as time. Frankie Lymon and the teenagers.
Hey, bro, it be like that, bro. It be like that. You know what I'm saying? What happened to the Wildcats basketball team after what's his name? Zac Efron. Whenever Zac Efron left the team, bro. In High School Musical, bro. What happened, bro? They were over there singing all type of shit during practice, bro. What happened after Zac left, bro? Trash, bro.
Broke up when they were at the top. The music
You
industry
always need the lead singer, bro. Y'all can replace the background people, bro. Unless you give the background people personalities and stuff too. That's the only way that's the only way that's gonna work, bro. You know what I'm saying?
was still on the rise,
Like, never mind.
so they never got to enjoy it, or got any money or any credit for writing Why Do Fools Fall in Love or any of their hits. They never saw a penny of it. Massive artists were recording these songs like Diana Ross, and the teenagers lived poor for the rest of their lives. The teenagers' career barely lasted a year, and although Frankie's lasted longer, his popularity would soon dwindle, due both to his own vices and the fault of others. Frankie had a problem. Due to management, the public thought that he was squeaky clean innocent teenager, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Frankie was a sex and drug addicted teen who was too big for his britches. As I said earlier, he started with pot when he was in grade school, but once he got into show business at the age of 15, he became addicted to the cure, aka heroin. Drugs were in the 50s everywhere, taking a lot of people off the normal course of life, and Frankie was one of them. Frankie became hooked to heroin at the age of 15, which severely harmed his career and life. The story of how he was introduced, heartbreaking. He was introduced when he was 15 by a woman who was nearly twice his age. He had learned to use the hypodermic needle during a New York party where
Hollow points that are locked in syringes and inject contractions from the muscle. They take fluids from the body. For example, taking blood from a vein. Oh. And those ones don't really got like do they leave holes for real? Because I feel like a lot of people that use heroin, like, I be hearing stories about people running out of spots to put on their arm and shit because, like, they be having so many holes, like, everywhere on their arms and stuff, like, because they be finding places to, like, you know what I'm saying, like, inject the, you know?
where a lot of musicians were shooting the stuff, and a woman at the same party showed him how to skin pop, to prick the skin with a needle to get a mild kick. I never intended to get hooked on dope, he said. I knew it was bad, and at first I was content to just skin pop, but as soon as I got daring, it wasn't long before I was injecting the stuff right into my veins. Once Frankie's record sales diminished and people found out Frankie was an addict, he became a no-no. Although everyone in the music industry at the time was on drugs, there were in prominent positions, and Frankie, a child, wasn't. Even worse, his voice was changing and no one wanted to develop him. No one wanted to make the transition with him. Nobody wants to develop the voice of a young man. By the time he was 17, no one wanted any part of it. He was blackballed by all the nightclubs, booking agents, and recording companies. On top of Frankie's drug addiction, he was an actor in the late 50s and everyone will listen to radio and records, so most people didn't know he was black at the time. So when he came on national TV, the crowd was puzzled, and the TV company executives forced them to stay in their seats, and cops were present as well. Poor Frankie stayed professional. To make matters worse, in July 19th, 1957, in the broadcast edition of Allen Street's The Big Beat Rich, a television show, he would dance with a white woman live on TV. Southerners were enraged. The show was canceled because of the event. All evidence of the show was physically destroyed. As a result, Frankie suffered another blow. In 1960, he made a short-lived attempt to shake the addiction, and although he had a lot of bad people in his corner, one man, Bob Redcross, Frankie's road manager for a while, tried to talk to him like a father. Frankie said, "He told me about other entertainers whose lives have been cut short by addiction, people he knew personally. He made me move into his house on Long Island where he could be around me all the time to make sure I wasn't sneaking drugs." This was very eerie coming from Frankie, knowing he would meet the fate his ex-road manager had tried so hard for him not to meet many years later. But at the time, Frankie was actually making good progress in conquering his addiction until a personal tragedy drew him back. His 39-year-old mother, ill for more than a year with terminal cancer, died unaware until the
39 is crazy. What was the life expectancy back then, bro? Wait. Expectancy, sure, 1950. 71. Dang, cancer took her like halfway.
end that she even had the disease. Frankie recalled when he was older, "We never told her the truth. She believed she was going to get well. One of the last things she asked me before she died if I had overcome my habit. I told her, 'Mama, don't worry. I'm doing the best I can. Bob's taking good care of me.' 4 months later, she died, and despondent over his mother's death, the 18-year-old entertainer returned to narcotics to deaden his grief. By the early 60s, Lymon's record sales declined sharply, and as a result of his drug habit picked up even more. By that time, drugs was what he was looking for. He was helpless in the face of his career. He still hustled some appearances, but the chance of reviving his glory days was long gone. And now he had lost his soprano voice he had had when he was a kid. He just didn't have the voice, and they would have to change the key 5 notes down and it would sound horrible. He had to lip sync on TV. At 19, he went to rehab in an attempt to become clean, and Levy would drop him from the record label. The next few years were him attempting to become clean but constantly falling back into heroin. In 1965, he tried reuniting with the teenagers, but it was a flop. Next year, he was
What you mean tried reuniting with the teenagers? Bruh, after all that time, I ain't even gonna lie, bruh. They don't even, bruh, come on, bruh. You can't try to go back to them after that, bruh. I ain't gonna lie. You shouldn't have dropped them in the first place, personally. You know what I'm saying? But hey,
was looking for a break and had many short-term contracts with 20th Century Fox Records and Columbia Records, but couldn't last. After Lyman lost his popularity, he'd get into a couple serious romantic relationships until his passing. He met his first wife, Elizabeth Waters, in 1961, and in 1964 they got married. They even had a daughter, but she died after 2 days. Their marriage ended, and he relocated to Los Angeles, where he resumed his relationship with Zona Taylor, whom he had known since he was 13. She was so in love with him, she allowed him to destroy her home and money, and had to move in with her sister. They had a marriage in Mexico, but it didn't last either. Frankie was unable to get jobs. His friends went on and said it really hurt to see Frankie. He was at his lowest point, and there are performances of him lip-syncing with his voice changed. He was no longer the Frankie his friends knew. He was always a brat and egotistical, but when he lost his voice, he was just another Joe. He would get to go to booking offices, and Frankie would come in and beg the bookers to try to get him a job, begging the owner, asking if he remembered who he once was. It was a very sad sight, and in 1965, Lyman made his final TV appearance. His condition was horrible. His performance in 1965 had shown how far he had fallen. He was missing a tooth, his skin was in bad shape. The drugs took a toll on him. He would prowl the streets of New York, searching for old show business friends for a loan to buy a bag of heroin to jolt his shattered nervous system. A few hours later, he'd be back on the hunt. He'd sleep on the subway cars, and no one recognized him as the teenage star he once was, due to his hollowed-eyed, disheveled figure. He'd say, dope peddlers and junkies treated him like a lick. Wherever he was lucky enough to find work, they lurked backstage, ready to get him hooked on a fix. In February of 1966, Frankie was arrested on charges of stealing a set of drums from a recording studio and pawning them to finance his habit. He insisted he was innocent, but lied a bit in that interview. His drug problem was getting worse. He was was arrested again on a heroin charge on June 21st, 1966. He'd do anything at the time to fuel his addiction. In fact, at that time, Boris Levy ripped off an addicted Lymon, buying Lymon's publishing rights for only $1,500, which went on to become worth millions and millions of dollars, although Frankie would have never lived to see any. But he was faced with a judge who said, "You don't put this uniform on, we'll put another on you." And while he was stationed, he met his wife, who he changed his life for. Lymon was stationed at Fort Gordon, Georgia, where he met a school teacher, Mia Eagle. While in the army, he would go AWOL, aka desert, and perform at local bars. He would receive a dishonorable discharge. During his time, he met his third and final wife, Amira, a school teacher, and Frankie was living a clean life. However, it didn't last. He met a man named Sam Bray who got him signed to Big Apple Records to record music. So in his 8th month of marriage, he went to New York with his wife's blessing and opted to move in with his grandma in Harlem. He was set on making a comeback. He didn't want to become a has-been like Shirley Temple, Jackie Coogan, or Frank Robinson. However, everyone was aware he was an addict, and promoters of nightclubs
What happened to Shirley Temple?
and theater owners knew that few addicts succeed in shaking their addiction. His new manager didn't have a lot of money. He was a food inspector, so all Frankie had for him was his talent, gut, and veteran instincts. The odds were against him. Months before his death, Lymon gave his last interview saying, "I know that many people aren't convinced that I've kicked the habit for good, but I know it, and that's the main thing. Sooner or later, the skeptics will get around to believing me. Meanwhile, I'm content to wait," Frankie said in his final interview.
One of the neighborhood kids said, "Hey, Lou, I heard that your brother died." So I laughed to my friend. I said, "Man, that's about the 4th time somebody told me that he had died." So since I was so close to my grandmother's, I said, well, let me go upstairs and say hello to my grandmother, and we'll have a joke about him dying again. And lo and behold, there was my father, policeman, and the person from the corridor. It was no joke. I didn't laugh that day.
Skeptics turned out to be right. Heroin was used for celebrating his good fortune of finding his way back into the industry. The day before Frankie was about to go to the studio to record his new song, he was discovered dead in his grandmother's bathroom holding a syringe. Lymon was only 25 years old when he passed away on February 27, 1968. He died flat broke, and by the 80s, 2 other of the teenagers were dead. They're surviving 4. An overdose in New York was a dime a dozen. Rehabs were popping up everywhere, and his death wasn't even enough to bat an eye. Years after his death, Diana Ross made his name relevant again by re-recording his famous tune, "Why Do Fools Fall in Love?" There was a film made in 1998 about his life, and in 1993, Frankie and the Teenagers were inducted into the Hall of Fame. He even got a star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame, with Madonna and many other celebrities writing for Frankie to get one. However, even in the grave, Frankie wasn't able to rest in peace. His inheritance sparked debate because he never divorced any of his wives. Lymon's name became worth millions, and his inheritance started to be fought for. Why Do Fools Fall in Love became a timeless record, being played in commercials and licensed everywhere. During Frankie's life, he never received a cent of royalties, but songs would get big, and all of a sudden, everyone was like, where's the money going? Frankie was due royalty, and his old manager Levy had robbed Frankie of his publishing so that it wasn't up for grabs. Myra, Frankie's final wife, asked Levy for her share, but Levy said he wasn't going to give it to her. He said Frankie had 2 other wives and took her to court. Myra eventually won and settled close to $1 million in royalties, likely much more today. The 2 teenagers who had originally written the song never got a cent. After losing the lawsuit in appeals court due to a statute of limitations on the case, essentially they had been cheated out of millions. Boris Levy had walked away with what's worth over 8 figures today. Frankie was snatched from the slums in Harlem at age 13 and catapulted into national prominence by a 1 in a million quirk of fame. The type of story you'd hear in a cheap novel, from a cute kid who won over the hearts of music lovers across the country to towards the end of his life a heroin addict. Heartbreaking sight. A young man growing up in Harlem had 35% chance of making it to 65, and Frankie, despite his massive success, couldn't quite shake the fate of being born in Harlem. Rock and roll was originally a teen phenomenon, and the The first teenage rock star was Frankie Lymon. Frankie and the Teenagers rejuvenated the music industry in the 50s. The girl group sound, as well as many other Motown early groups, were formed around Frankie and the Teenagers dynamic. Some of the most accomplished musicians of the century, such as Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, Ronnie Spector, the Chantels, the Temptations, and many more, were influenced by Frankie. In the end, Frankie's story makes a kid like me feel grateful for the time I was born in, but also makes me realize how little the world has really changed.
Nah, that was fire. That was fire. Dad used to say the worst thing you can do for a young man is give him what he wants. When man enriches, he will always self-destruct. Dang. When you start off church choir but ended up on the bottle, needles, snorting nose candy, dead and gone. You can't serve two masters. So sad for him. Hooked on her at 13, grown woman old enough to be his mother, assaulting him, greedy managers. Producer just wanted to steal time for their own benefit, not helping nurture him. Every adult in his life were predators. Should be ashamed of themselves. No, facts, bro. They really took advantage of the little dude, bro. Alright, basically being molested by older women. If he were a little girl and sleeping with men 2 times her age, people would be upset because he's a boy. You think he's lucky to have older women? Kid life was doomed from the start. Working a full-time job at 10 years old. Yeah, bro. That's crazy, bro. That's actually wild, bro. Like, damn. Damn. Like, this video look like so, like, this video looks so different now. Like, now that I know all that stuff, that's crazy, bro. Damn. Wild. It be like that, though, bro. It be like that. Oh, I was about to look this up, actually. Okay, hold up.
Moods and their reflections in terms of music. But now we come to a mood that is the product of our present generation. The bubbling enthusiasm of our teenagers was the inspiration for what is now the most popular style of music in the country, the rock and roll. A few short weeks ago, 5 teenage boys went into a recording studio and they said they had a song they wanted to sing.
Yeah.
Well, it took a little time, 3 weeks to be exact, but they were heard and their song was recorded. It is now the #1 record in America. And the song is, Why Do Fools Fall in Love? And the boys literally enough call themselves the Teenagers. Well, here you are. So, you guys are the Teenagers.
That's right,
Is that the one that's 6'6"?
Mr. Lane.
Come on, boys. Let's sing our song then.
That come out of you?
Yes, sir. Can we sing now?
What's your hurry?
I have to make my money before my voice changes.
That's fine. That's
News
fine.
for you, Dad. It ain't gonna go much lower. You're in a barrel now. Frankie, you amaze me. Tell me something. You're only 13 years old, and yet you wrote this big hit. How did it ever happen?
Well, Mr. Lane, one day I was dressing, and inspiration came to me, so I wrote the song.
No, it is.
Well, what's
Facts.
the inspiration?
I needed a new suit.
Well, that's a pretty good reason. But I can't understand how you could write Why Do Fools Fall in Love? What does a 13-year-old boy know about love?
Well, Mr. Lane, I've been falling in love since I was only 5.
5?
But I've been a fool about it since I was 11.
Well, don't complain, lad. You've only had 2 rough years. I go all the way back to Bridie Murphy. I think we've had enough of this little chit-chat. This is your first nationwide television appearance, isn't it?
That's right, sir.
And I know that everybody's waiting to hear you sing, so are you ready to rock and roll it?
That's right.
That means I ought to get lost, huh?
That's about it.
Because it's like, these guys are like they're what really makes the, you know what I'm saying, the background. You can't just get some 4 random guys. Like, I mean, these guys are, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, Frankie begged them to join the group. Teenagers wanting for. Oh, they got comments turned off.